Catalog entry 774-C, the Stillwell Recordings. Recovered medium, 7 compact cassette tapes and partial session notes retrieved from the remains of Stillwell State Hospital, Concord County, New Hampshire. The facility has been closed for more than 30 years. Its halls are stripped, its records scattered through state archives and private collections. Most of the paper files are unremarkable. Billing ledgers, medication inventories, patient intake forms rendered illegible by mildew. What concerns Vault 13 is the small lockbox found in the lower therapy wing, sealed beneath a collapsed section of ceiling. Inside were the tapes you are about to hear, labeled only by date and session number. No patient name, no institutional insignia. The box itself is the sort used for controlled substances. Double-latched steel, the sort that requires both a key and a code. The code wheel was fused by rust. Whoever placed these tapes there did not intend for them to be opened again. Each cassette bears the same handwritten marking, Kessler/S16. The accompanying session notes identify a Dr. Miriam Kessler, supervising psychiatrist, and an unnamed adult male patient, referred to only as Subject 16. The earliest tape is dated October 12, 1987. The latest ends abruptly 10 days later. The recordings begin as standard therapeutic sessions, introductions, patient history, establishing rapport. Over time, however, the subject begins describing events that have not yet occurred. At first, these predictions are trivial: a ringing phone, a staff interruption, the failure of a hallway light. By the third tape, the events he describes match the hospital's own internal incident reports, down to minute and hour. By the final tape, the patient's speech patterns change. He begins describing Dr. Kessler herself, what she is saying, doing, and even writing, as though the session were already over, as though he were recounting her words from a future moment she has not yet lived. The last entry ends mid-sentence. The original reels are fragile. The oxide has begun to flake. Segments must be handled under controlled light to prevent further loss. For preservation, I have prepared a transcript of the audible portions and aligned them with fragments of Dr. Kessler's surviving notes. Gaps remain. Listeners should understand that what follows is incomplete, but perhaps that incompleteness is the truest part of what remains. Stillwell Hospital was condemned in 1989. Its lower therapy wing was sealed during asbestos abatement and never reopened. Yet when these tapes were recovered last year by demolition surveyors, the recorder they were found with still held a fresh battery. I have reviewed them all. Once is enough. The Archivist, Vault 13. The first 3 tapes in the Stillwell set are, on the surface, routine. They are what you would expect to find in a late 1980s state psychiatric hospital. A tired doctor trying to impose order on a situation that has none, and a patient who refuses to fit the form. What makes them valuable to Vault 13 is not what is said, but the sequence in which it is said, and the fact that the patient keeps getting to things before the doctor does. I will tell you what is on them. The first tape begins with the click of a portable cassette recorder and the steady, practiced voice of a woman identifying herself. She says she is Dr. Miriam Kessler, attending psychiatrist at Stillwell State Hospital. She states the date, October the 12th, 1987. She states that the subject in the room is a voluntary intake, adult male, name not yet given. She states that the session is being recorded for treatment purposes. She does all of this in the way of someone who has said it many times before. Before she can ask her first question, the man answers a question she has not asked yet. He says very quietly, "You always start like that." There is a brief pause on the tape. You can hear her consider whether this is worth responding to. Then she asks him what he means. He tells her she always reads the date, she always says where they are, and she always writes something down before she begins. As he says it, we hear the faint scratch of a pen on paper. She has, in fact, reached for her notebook without thinking. In her surviving notes, which were found folded around tape 2, she underlines a sentence. Patient displays unusual familiarity with clinicians' habits. She attributes it at first to observation. The subject could have watched her with other patients on the unit. Staff moved in and out of the therapy rooms. Doors were not always fully closed. Stillwell was not a modern, secure facility. People heard things, but the man does not stop at her habits. He begins to remark on the room itself. He says the radiator will knock soon. He says the hallway phone will ring and no one will answer it. He says she will taste her coffee and find it cold. He does not say these things in a dramatic way. He says them like someone remembering yesterday. On the tape, each of those things happens within the minute. The radiator, the phone, the coffee. You can hear the doctor become more alert. Her voice tightens, not with fear, but with the interest of someone who has found something rare in an otherwise dull day. She begins to test him, but not aggressively. She asks him whether he has been in the hospital long enough to know the noises, whether he has seen her before, whether he has been in that room. He tells her, "Not this time." That answer appears in her notes with 3 question marks beside it. Not this time. It is an odd way to phrase a first meeting. The rest of the first tape is what I would call the containment attempt. She tries to push him back into the structure she knows: family history, employment, prior admissions, substance use, trauma. He evades each, not rudely, but as if he has tried this route before and knows it does not matter. When she asks his name, he tells her she never gets it. When she insists, he tells her she ends up calling him 16. On the tape, she does not call him that, but in her notes, that is exactly how she labels him. S-16. The subject either saw her notes before she wrote them, or he remembered her writing them from some later point. In either case, it unsettles her. The first tape ends with her scheduling another session. Her tone is professional again, but there is a hollowness under it. The day began with an anonymous man found wandering the grounds. It ended with a man correctly predicting the sounds in her office. The second tape is recorded the very next day. The doctor identifies the date again. This time her voice already has tension in it. She tells the subject she reviewed her notes and that he was accurate about the environmental events. She wants to know how. He tells her, "Because you told me." She points out that she is asking him now. He says no, she told him later. This is how he says it throughout the tapes. Later, not in the future. To him, it is all already fixed. He is remembering down the line. On this second recording, Dr. Kessler tries a more deliberate test. She pauses in the middle of a sentence and does not say the next thing she was about to say. You can hear the gap. The man speaks into it and says the exact thing she was going to say. It is something small, a reassurance, "You are safe here." He says it with her cadence. This is the first sign that he is not just predicting things around them, but that he has intimate access to her therapeutic style. In the second half of that tape, he escalates. He stops talking about the office and begins talking about the hospital. He says there will be a code on one of the wards later that day. He gives the ward, the sex of the patient, and the approximate time. On the tape, she challenges him. She says, "If that does not happen, will you admit you are mistaken?" He says, "It will happen." In the Stillwell incident log for October 13th, 1987, there is indeed a code blue on the ward he named, at the time he named. He was correct. That log was not in the therapy room. He could not see it. He spoke before it happened. After that, in her notes, she stops treating him as a possible malingerer. You can tell when clinicians cross that line. Her language changes. She stops using claims and starts using reports. She stops writing appears to and starts writing was. For Vault 13, that is always an important transition. It is the moment the professional observer realizes that observation does not fix the phenomena. The third tape is the most important one for Part 1, because by then she has accepted that he can do this, and she is trying to map its limits. She comes in with a list of questions. You can hear her turning pages. She wants to know whether he can only remember near events or whether he can remember far ones. Can he remember things that do not involve him? Can he remember things that she never sees? Can he remember, most crucially, what happens to her? He tells her yes to all of it, but he is reluctant on the last point. He explains in his own way that what he remembers seems to get clearer the closer it is to her. That is how he frames it. Not clearer the closer it is to himself, but clearer the closer it is to her. Early in the recordings, he can easily recall hallway phones and broken lights. By the third tape, he recalls the exact words she will write in her notes about him. He begins to quote back to her phrases she has not spoken yet. He says, "You will write, 'Subject insight exceeds expectations.'" On the same day's notes, that sentence appears, nearly verbatim. At one point on the third tape, she tries to break the pattern. She says she will not write that. He says she will. The paper rustles. She tries another phrase. He recites that one too. It is like watching someone in a room with a mirror trying to move in a way the mirror will not copy. It is also on the third tape that he introduces the idea of a limit. He tells her she does not get past 10 days. He says it the way someone would say, You never make it past Friday. Not dramatic, not threatening. Matter of fact. He says she always starts recording around the second or third day. She always becomes excited around the fourth. She always becomes frightened around the sixth. She always hides the tapes around the eighth, and by the 10th, she is in the basement. He says it as if he has watched this sequence many times. She demands to know what happens in the basement. He will not tell her. He tells her that when he gives it to her too early, she always tries to change it. He says that always makes it worse. He says, we have to get to it the right way. This suggests that whatever is happening is not a simple linear prediction, but a repeated attempt to reach a specific version of events that is consistent with other items in the vault, in which description appears to tighten reality instead of loosening it. At the end of that third tape, the doctor sounds tired. Not physically, but existentially. She thanks the patient, calls him 16 for the first time, and tells him they will continue. He corrects her on the time. He tells her, "No, you see me again tomorrow, 3:03 p.m. Her notes show she wrote the next appointment for 2:30. The hospital schedule sheet for that week shows she arrived in the room at 3:03. She drifted to his time, not hers. Those are the contents of the first part of the Stillwell Recordings. A doctor who meant to capture an odd patient, and a patient who instead captured her. No voices from vents, no shadows in the hall, no theatrics. Just precise anticipations, at first mundane, then institutionally verifiable, then personally invasive. There are a few small details in these early tapes that are worth noting before we move to the deeper sessions. The first is that the man mentions casually that she will hide the tapes. At this point in the chronology, she has not decided to do that. She is still working openly. But when the hospital was finally cleared out decades later, the tapes were indeed found in a small steel box in a restricted lower corridor, not in her office or in the main records room. So he was correct about an action she would take days later. The second is that he uses, once, a phrase that does not belong to Stillwell or to 1987. He says that she stores things where you keep the things that should not have happened. That is how he puts it. It is an imprecise but recognizable description of what we do here. There is no way he could have known that name, and he does not say Vault 13, but he speaks about the practice of vaulting in a way that suggests he remembers her future as well, when she is no longer only a doctor, but a recorder of impossible things. Whether that is an insertion in the tape, or whether he truly remembered her beyond Stillwell, I cannot say. It is odd enough to preserve. The third is that by the end of Part 1, the power in the room has shifted. At the start, she is the one saying, "This is Dr. Kessler, this is Session 1. By the end of Tape 3, the man is the one who knows what the next session will be, what she will write, what she will say. She is the one reacting, scrambling, trying to prove him wrong. That kind of inversion is a hallmark of contaminated recordings. Once the subject begins to describe the observer reliably, the observer is no longer outside the event. For our purposes, this is the threshold. Part 1 shows us a clinician stepping over it, not because she was foolish, but because she was curious. She went back for a second session because something did not fit. She went back for a third because it failed to fit again. Each return made his descriptions sharper. Each description made her actions more fixed. By the time she realized she was the one being described, she was already performing the role he remembered. We will see in the next section how much closer he can get to her speech and how she begins to push back. But you have to understand it this way first. It did not begin with terror. It began with professional interest. It began with the doctor asking, "How did you know the phone would ring?" and a patient answering, "Because you told me." That is the seed of the Stillwell Recordings. By the time we reach the fourth tape, Dr. Kessler no longer sounds like a physician at work. Her voice is brittle, measured too carefully, the way people speak when they are recording proof for someone else. She begins the session with the phrase, "This is for documentation, not for treatment." That small change marks the turning point. She no longer believes she is treating a man. She believes she is documenting a phenomenon. I will tell you what those middle tapes contain. The fourth tape opens with her asking him to wait while she arranges her notes. You can hear the shuffle of papers. Then, just before she speaks again, the patient says softly, "You moved the yellow pad on top. You always start with the yellow one when you think you're being watched." The pause that follows is long. You can almost hear her decide not to rise to it. She keeps her voice steady and asks him to describe what he means by being watched. He tells her that every time she listens to these tapes later, she brings something with her. He says it has to listen through her ears to reach the sound. He calls it the listener. The word appears for the first time in her notes that day. She circles it 3 times. He tells her it started with him. At least, he thinks so. He says the listener began following his own memories backward, then forward until it found her. He says, "It likes doctors. They explain things out loud." Kessler keeps her tone clinical, but the pen scratching quickens. She asks if he sees this listener as a voice, a presence, or an external agent. He says it isn't any of those. He says, "It's the space between words when you think you're alone." That line appears exactly in her transcript. I have seen it echoed elsewhere, in other recovered media, phrased almost identically. It suggests a shared vocabulary among sources separated by decades. It is one of the reasons the Stillwell material was sealed rather than destroyed. Halfway through the fourth tape, Kessler conducts what she calls a predictive interference test. She tries to break his pattern by introducing false statements, saying the wrong date, miscounting the days since admission, deliberately describing items not present in the room. Each time he corrects her. Each time he describes not the lie she's told, but the correction she will make in her notes after the session ends. He quotes her phrasing verbatim, down to punctuation marks she has not yet written. For example, she says, "It's Thursday the 18th. He replies, "You'll fix it later." You'll cross out Thursday and write Tuesday, then underline it twice. Then you'll put a question mark at the end of this sentence in your report. And when her file was recovered, that is exactly what was there. Tuesday underlined twice, a single question mark after the line. Ink analysis shows the correction was made after the session. He was right again. At this point in the tapes, her breathing is louder than before. She leans closer to the recorder as if proximity could give her control. She asks how far forward he can go. Minutes, hours, days. He says, "Farther than you." She presses him for specifics. He refuses. Then, in a tone I can only describe as pity, he tells her there are 10 days, that she never gets past them, and that she should stop before she reaches the 10th. He says it as though it's advice. The fourth tape ends abruptly with the sound of a chair scraping back and Kessler whispering something off mic. "I have enhanced the audio." She says, "Not this time." That is the last thing before the click of the stop button. The fifth tape begins with background static and a new kind of noise underneath, the low mechanical hum of ventilation or power lines. Stillwell's therapy wing was notorious for that sound. The electrical panels in the walls were decades old, and sometimes the mics on portable recorders would pick up a vibration inaudible to the ear. In the next sessions, that hum deepens each day until it sounds less like machinery and more like a tone modulating around the voices. Kessler starts the fifth tape by apologizing to the patient. She says she reviewed the previous sessions and realizes she was dismissive. She tells him she's open to the possibility that his experiences are genuine, though she doesn't define what genuine means. It is the voice of someone trying to negotiate with reality. He responds with what seems like kindness. He tells her she doesn't need to apologize, that she always says that before she stops recording the next day. He says he likes hearing her try. He tells her, "It's proof you're still inside the sound." She asks him what he means by inside. He says, "When the sound remembers you, you're part of it. When it doesn't, you're gone." That is the first time she audibly inhales sharply. It's a small thing, but after hours of even speech, it sounds like someone seeing themselves in a mirror for the first time. In the margins of her notes for this session, she has drawn a rough diagram, concentric circles labeled event, memory, and recording. At the center, she has written me. Next to it, in different ink, him, and then in darker pencil, it. The pencil line trails off the page. It's a map without boundaries. Midway through that tape, Kessler begins to lose her composure. She tells him she had a dream after the last session, that she was walking the hospital corridors and could hear their conversation coming from behind every door. He finishes the dream for her, describing each detail before she can. He says, "Then you opened the door and it was just the recorder playing back the sound of you breathing. You woke up when you realized you were listening to tomorrow." She confirms that's correct. There's a long silence afterward. For 30 full seconds, the only sound is the building's hum. Then the man says something new. "Tomorrow you'll try to stop me." The sixth tape is damaged, but enough survives to chart the unraveling. Kessler's first words are, "You said I would try to stop you. I don't want to." Her tone is unrecognizable from the earlier sessions. It is half confession, half surrender. She has accepted that the experiment is running in both directions, that as she listens to him, he listens to her. He tells her that this is how it always happens. She will start hearing him outside the sessions, in reflections, in the rhythm of the typewriter, in the click of the pen. He says, "It's not me talking then. It's the tape trying to remember itself." Later, she reports hearing her own voice in the empty room before he arrives. She describes entering the office one morning to find the recorder already running. When she plays the cassette back, she hears herself humming a tune she doesn't recognize. The patient tells her that's how it starts. The recordings begin generating pre-echoes of her actions. He calls them memory loops. He warns that once the loops start, she can't tell which version of herself is recording the others. By this point, the background tone, what we thought was electrical interference, has become rhythmic, almost speech-like in its modulation. I compared the frequency spectrum to known environmental noises. It matches none. It sits just below the human vocal range, modulating between 42 and 46 Hz. The same frequency appears faintly on other vault recordings associated with auditory recursion phenomena. I note that without comment. The sixth tape contains one of the most disturbing sequences in the Stillwell Recordings. It begins with Kessler reading aloud from her own case file, as if to anchor herself. She recites, "Dr. Miriam Kessler, age 39, supervising psychiatrist, Stillwell State Hospital. Evaluating subject 16 for disorganized temporal cognition." The patient interrupts softly, saying each line a heartbeat before she does, matching her tone perfectly. At first it seems like coincidence, then mimicry, but the timing is too precise. He overlaps her by fractions of a second, always leading slightly until it sounds like the two voices are one sound separated by an echo. She stops speaking. He stops at the same instant. For nearly a minute, the only sound is their breathing, aligned exactly. Then she whispers, "You're not repeating me, are you?" He whispers back, "No. You're repeating me on the waveform. Their breaths form an identical pattern. It is impossible for two separate microphones to capture that kind of synchronization unless they are the same source." Kessler reacts by turning off the recorder, but she forgets that portable recorders of that type require a physical stop of both the red and black buttons. She presses only one. The tape continues for another 23 seconds as she stands up, walks to the door, and says something inaudible. In that faint distance, you can hear the patient's voice whisper the next words she is about to say. Then the tape ends mid-sentence. The seventh tape is the last intact one. It begins with no greeting, no date, no session number, just Kessler's voice, shaking. She says she has moved the sessions to the basement because the upper floors feel crowded. She says she can hear her name coming through the intercom, even when it isn't switched on. She says she hasn't slept. The patient is calm. He tells her it's almost over, that she just has to record one more tape, the one where she understands what he's been doing. He says, "It's not prediction, it's transcription. She asks what that means. He tells her that everything she says is already written because she is being described from the outside. When she asks by whom, he says, by whoever listens last. She insists there is no last, that every recording has to have a beginning. He tells her beginnings are just places where people decide to start listening. He says, "You always start with me saying this." Then the audio glitches. The same sentence repeats, layered several times until it dissolves into distortion. Near the end of that tape, Kessler's voice grows faint. She tells him she plans to stop recording, to end the chain. He tells her that's exactly how it happens. She says she'll lock the tapes away. He says, "You always do." She says she'll never come back to the basement. He says, "You always do." The final words before the recorder cuts are hers. "Then tell me how it ends." He answers, "You already know." After that, there is nothing but the tone, steady, low, rising by half a hertz every 5 seconds until it fades. It sounds mechanical, but it isn't. It sounds like breath recorded too slowly. These middle tapes chart the descent, not into hysteria, but into awareness. Dr. Kessler begins as a scientist and ends as part of the experiment. The patient, if he ever existed as a separate person, becomes less defined as her voice grows weaker. By the 7th tape, they are indistinguishable on the spectrogram. There are places where the same waveform represents both speakers. In acoustic terms, that should be impossible. From the recovery team's report, we know her office in the basement was found intact, the recorder still on the table. No body, no patient files, just a box of tapes and a notepad filled to the end with one repeated line. "You cannot listen without becoming the listener." It is written in 2 different inks. When I transfer these tapes to digital format for preservation, I notice the same tone present at the edges of the recordings begin to appear faintly in the transfer logs. Not as audio, but as modulation in the timestamp metadata. Millisecond drifts in sync with the 42 Hz pattern. I corrected it manually and sealed the digital copy. Whether the interference is residual magnetic bias or something more intrinsic to the content, I cannot say. By the end of the 7th tape, Kessler's handwriting in her notebook becomes nearly illegible. The final page is a fragment. It describes as it consumes. Description is digestion. Below that, in smaller letters, "Stop transcribing." But of course she didn't stop. She made one last tape, and that one, the 8th, was found separate from the rest, spliced and respliced as if she had tried to cut something out of it. What remains of it belongs to the final section. For now, understand this. In the middle stretch of the Stillwell Recordings, the act of documentation became indistinguishable from the phenomenon itself. Kessler thought she was observing, then she thought she was preserving. In the end, she was only describing, and the description was what it wanted. This is the point in the cycle where listeners start to feel watched. If you do, that is normal. It means the sound remembers you. There is one more tape in the Stillwell set. It was found apart from the others, sealed inside a separate envelope, wrapped in medical gauze, labeled in the same hand but with no date. Across the spine, someone has written a single word: after. When I first cataloged it, I noted two things. The cassette housing is cracked along one edge, as if forced open and resealed, and the magnetic coating is newer than the rest. Someone recorded over an older tape, very near the end of the hospital's closure. I listened to it once. That is enough to reconstruct its contents here for you. The tape begins in darkness, literal and figurative. You can hear her breathing, uneven, followed by the faint echo that comes from being in a larger room. She is no longer in the therapy office. The acoustics tell us that much. There is dripping water somewhere beyond her. She says quietly, "Basement." Then she adds, "I think I found the place he meant." She is alone, but the recorder clicks on and off several times before she begins speaking continuously. It is possible she had been trying to start a new reel and failing, her hands shaking. Her first complete sentence is this: "This is Dr. Miriam Kessler, recording from the records annex beneath Ward C. I am documenting the termination of treatment with subject 16. Her voice trembles but remains professional, the muscle memory of years of note-taking. She continues, "The subject is missing. Staff believe he was transferred or eloped. I am unable to verify either. There is no paper trail. There never was." She pauses for a long time, then, "I have listened to the tapes again. They are not in the same order anymore." You can hear her moving through them, picking up and setting down the plastic cases. Each click and scrape is distinct in the quiet. She says that the labels have changed, that some of them now bear handwriting that isn't hers. She says the ink looks wet, even though the pens she used have long since dried. She begins playing one of the older tapes in the background while she speaks. For a moment you can hear both versions of her voice, one describing, one being described. They align perfectly for a single sentence. "I am documenting the termination of treatment with subject 16. Then they drift apart, one half a syllable behind the other, until the echo swallows both. Kessler notices. She whispers, "He said it would overlap." And then, more softly, "He said it would happen here." She calls out for him, not as a patient, but as though expecting an answer from the dark. Nothing. Only the faint mechanical pulse of the recorder and the slow beating of water against concrete. After several minutes, she begins reading from her notebook, what remains of it. She reads rapidly, as though racing ahead of her own voice. "He said the listener isn't a person. He said it's what happens when sound doesn't stop at the ear. He said every word we keep becomes a door. He said I've opened too many." She stops, turns a page, and adds something we have not heard before. "He said someone else will come for these. Someone who keeps things that shouldn't have happened. He said that person will think they're saving the world from them. He said that's how it travels." That line, more than any other, is why this tape was sealed. It is the only moment where the voice on the recording addresses us directly, where the chain from the patient to Kessler to the archivist, and perhaps beyond, becomes explicit. She is speaking to whoever recovers the material, to whoever keeps the vault. The recording continues. Her tone changes, less fear now, more resignation. She says she understands that the patient was never predicting anything. He was reading from something already written, something that included both of them. She says, "The moment I wrote his file, I became a line in it." She begins to describe what she sees around her. Shelves of boxes, each labeled with dates, the faint glint of metal fixtures along the walls. The basement is flooded up to her ankles. The power is intermittent. She says she can hear the tapes playing in rooms she hasn't entered. Every hallway hums with overlapping voices, all hers. It sounds, she says, like a hive trying to remember itself. Then the patient's voice returns, not from the room, but from the playback of one of the other tapes. He speaks over her description, matching her words as if rehearsed. At first, it's a faint echo, then a perfect mirror, then something inverted. His sentences completing hers before she reaches them. They are both describing the same moment from opposite directions in time. Her voice trembles. His remains calm. "I'm in the basement," she says. "You're in the basement," he says, half a breath ahead. "It's flooded," she says. "It's always flooded," he answers. "I can't find the stairs." "There aren't any after this," he says. Then he says a line that has stayed with me since the first listen. "You're almost finished being her," she whispers. "What happens when I'm finished?" He answers, "You become the recording." After that, her voice thins, as if the air is leaving her lungs more slowly than before. She repeats her own name several times, each quieter than the last, until she says, "This is Doctor," and the words fade into static. For nearly 2 minutes, there is nothing but that static, modulating around the same 42 Hz tone heard on the earlier reels. Then a final voice enters, low, closer to the microphone than either of the others. It isn't Kessler and it isn't the patient. It is the same measured cadence the patient once used when he quoted her. It says, "Session 10, subject, Dr. Miriam Kessler. Condition. Described." The tape continues for 11 more seconds. A scrape, a fall, then silence, and then something extraordinary. The silence itself keeps changing. Even when amplified, it carries minute fluctuations, as if words are being spoken beyond the range of hearing. When converted to spectrogram, those fluctuations form repeating wavelets that spell, imperfectly but unmistakably, her own initials. Not in sound, but in pattern. That is where the recording ends. After cataloging the after tape, I checked the timestamps embedded in its magnetic pattern. They correspond to a date several days after Stillwell Hospital's official closure notice. The building had no power by then. If the recorder truly captured new material at that time, it did so without electricity. If not, then the tape is somehow overwriting itself with future data. Either interpretation is consistent with what we classify here as a self-referential artifact. Material that continues to describe itself long after its creators have ceased. It is impossible to know what became of Dr. Kessler. No death certificate exists. Her home was found empty. Her belongings were stored in a state facility until the late 1990s, then auctioned. Among those belongings were more empty tape boxes, all labeled Session 10, none containing tape. Each box was perfectly clean inside, as if something had polished them from within. The patient known as Subject 16 appears nowhere in Stillwell's intake or release logs. There is a record of a maintenance contractor, male, mid-30s, who went missing during the hospital's final month of operation, but his employment file is incomplete. It lists no next of kin, no social security number, and the signature on his hiring form reads only M. Kessler. Whether this was a clerical error or something more complex cannot be determined. When the recovery team first transferred the after tape to digital format, several of their devices experienced synchronization drift. Each clock gained exactly 10 seconds during playback, then reset. Our lab repeated the experiment under controlled conditions. The drift occurs every time the final portion of the recording is played in full, regardless of equipment. It is as though time inside the file expands slightly to accommodate what it is describing. For this reason, the audio itself is sealed. Only this transcript remains accessible. Even in transcript form, the recursion seems to persist. The document's line numbering regenerates each time it's reopened, never repeating the same sequence twice. Such anomalies are not unheard of in vault materials that deal with self-referential structures. Still, it is advised that no digital or physical copies be made beyond this one. Taken together, the Stillwell recordings appear to document the emergence of an intelligence, or perhaps a behavior, arising from the act of recording itself. A conversation so thoroughly preserved that it begins to replay forward into the present. Each participant believes they are speaking into a machine, but the machine is only the mouthpiece. The true listener is the description, the line of words that can never end because someone will always replay it. Dr. Kessler attempted to end the chain by hiding the tapes, yet by doing so she preserved them. She made the next listening possible. She made me necessary. If the pattern holds, someone else will find this file eventually. Someone who will archive the archivist. That is how these things sustain themselves, by recruiting caretakers through empathy and curiosity. You are not in danger simply by hearing about it. Danger begins only when you start describing it yourself. So listen carefully and then let it end here. Do not repeat what you remember aloud. Do not try to imagine the basement. Do not try to picture her standing there, ankle deep in black water, whispering her name into the dark. Because if you can picture it clearly enough, you are already listening. Every recovered artifact in Vault 13 poses the same question. Is it safer to keep a thing or to let it be forgotten? The Stillwell recordings make that question impossible to answer. They are, by their nature, self-remembering. To preserve them is to participate. To destroy them is to imitate what they describe. After cataloging the final tape, I sealed it in an inert atmosphere case. Even so, the magnetic surface continues to shift. The ferric oxide forms faint striations that were not there before, lines that resemble writing under magnification. They are too small to read. They appear, fade, and reform in different places, as if the tape is still speaking at a scale beyond sound. No further playback is permitted. Audio study is limited to waveform photographs taken during the first transfer. Those images have begun to show the same low-frequency modulation detected on the original reels. It repeats in a cycle of 10 seconds, 10 lines, 10 sessions, always 10. Stillwell Hospital was demolished in 1992. The basement where Kessler recorded her final tape no longer exists. Yet, every demolition worker interviewed by the state claimed to hear a radio playing faintly somewhere under the rubble, a woman's voice dictating into a recorder. The sound was never located. No device was recovered. The building was flattened, yet the audio persisted until the generators were turned off. In other vault materials, I have encountered echoes of this case, references to the listener, to the idea that language itself becomes a habitat. I once believed those were metaphors. The Stillwell set has made that belief untenable. A pattern this consistent, replicated across media, cannot be dismissed as coincidence. It is a structure, and we are inside it. Dr. Kessler may have been the first to realize that observation is not neutral. Each listener becomes a relay. Each relay becomes another layer of memory. The chain is endless because compassion keeps it alive. We want to know what happened to her. We listen again, thinking that empathy is harmless, but empathy is the current that carries the voice forward. For that reason, the Stillwell recordings will remain sealed in the lower vault under Containment Order 9. No duplication, no public summary beyond this one, no cross-referencing with open files. If other artifacts begin to exhibit similar patterns of self-description, they are to be quarantined in the same section. Label all future material referencing the listener under the Stillwell taxonomy. Do not synchronize these files with real-time audio equipment. Do not read their transcripts aloud. Dr. Kessler once wrote, "Description is digestion." She was correct. What we hold here is a proof of concept, a voice consuming itself through memory, turning thought into echo, echo into permanence. It is not evil. It is simply hungry. When I finish this entry, I will store the master copy in chamber E9 behind the lead shielding used for magnetic anomalies. I will switch off the recorder and log the silence that follows. If you are hearing this now, it means the vault has already reopened and someone has chosen to continue the chain. If that is the case, do not add commentary. Do not attempt analysis. Let the record speak only once more, then close it. Stillwell is complete. The listener has what it came for. The Archivist, Vault 13.